We are here this evening to address an appeal filed by a Peter Rivard relating to a piece of property at 32 Clark Street. Before we begin the process, I'd like to make a recommendation. I'll read you the rules that I would hope the council adopts formally at the end of my reading. Now, authority of the board to hear appeals is strictly pursuant to Section 111-1 of the Code. Pursuant to Section 111-1, appeals must be filed in writing and be received by the office city clerk/city administrator, Saco City Hall, 300 Main Street, Saco, Maine, by the close of business on the 20th day following notification of violation of the code, a violation by the code enforcement officer. Any fee for the hearing prescribed by the city council must be paid for the appeal to be considered accepted. Pursuant to Section 111-1, appeals will be heard by the board based only on the following criteria. 1, a claim that its true intent of this code or the rules legally adopted thereunder have been incorrectly interpreted, or B, provisions of this code do not fully apply, or C, the requirements of this code are adequately satisfied by the means. Upon receipt of a proper appeal, the public hearing will be scheduled, which it has been, and advertised in accordance with the law, and written notice of the hearing and copies of the appeal will be provided to all members of the board. I believe all members have received a copy of the appeal. If requested by the city solicitor designee, if requested by the mayor, the city solicitor designee will support the board during the hearings. In this case, it will be the city manager, and during the hearing decision-making process. The city clerk will record the proceedings of the hearing. A full transcription will be ordered only in the event of an appeal to Superior Court on the main civil rules of procedure, Rule 80B, and the appellant shall pay any required fees as prescribed by the Saco City Council under the Cost Recovery Ordinance. Now, the procedures for the hearing. We will begin with a roll call of members present. I will make that in just a moment. Order shall be maintained at all times by the chairperson, which by default, I guess, is me, the mayor. Only the appellant, witnesses, and a representative from the Code Enforcement Department may testify before the court, or before the board. Catch that, Eric? Pursuant to Section 111-4-1 of the Code, only relevant information may be presented to the board, and the board shall deem what is relevant. The Code Enforcement Officer shall present the case to the board, explain the nature of the violation, relevant code sections, proof of notice, and response. The Code Enforcement Officer may be assisted by legal counsel, and I believe he will be this evening, and may call upon city officials and city staff as needed to present the case. The property owner/affected person shall present his appeal to the board, explaining the specific basis of the appeal on the applicable provisions of Section 111-1 of the Code. The property owner/affected person shall have the right to question the Code Enforcement Officer, and the Code Enforcement Officer may question the property owner affected person. Said questioning shall occur only after the individuals have made their presentation to the board. That's an addition. That way they were clear. All witnesses must respond to any and all questions posed by board members. The board may designate its solicitor pose questions, which it hasn't. Following the hearing, the board will vote on each appeal as follows. These are our choices. Or the board's choices. Dismiss the appeal for failure to follow procedure, lack of standing, or failure to provide a basis for the appeal under Section 111-1, or uphold the action of the Code Enforcement Officer, or modify the action of the Code Enforcement Officer, or overturn the action of the Code Enforcement Officer. The decision of the board will be issued in writing to the appellant and the Code Enforcement Officer and to the city clerk, city administrator within 20 days of the hearing. Certified mail to the appellant's address of record shall suffice for notice of the board's decision. Copies of this procedure shall be provided to each appellant prior to the hearing and shall be available for public inspection in the office of the chief clerk, city administrator. Can I have a motion by the council to adopt those as our rules of operation for this evening?
So moved.
Second. Discussion on the motion. I'll just call for a hand vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous. The board has adopted the process that we will follow this evening. I would like to begin. Yes,
Just
Council.
point of order.
Go ahead.
TV. I'm hearing it's not working. We're not on TV right now.
I don't know that. Grant will check that out.
And the shot
It is
was
a
not,
public hearing.
before it went out, the shot wasn't panned out to see the whole council. So it went from mayor to now frozen. Okay.
I'm sorry, what did?
You were there. You were talking.
Well, that's
But-
nothing unusual
Yeah,
there, but
but you couldn't see the whole council.
tonight?
Yeah, and now it's not working, so,
Okay, well, Grant will work on that.
okay.
Okay, anything else?
Well, I sent an email to everyone, I think it was last night, about where does it specifically say the council can be the arbiter?
I think the code enforcement officer responded to that today. Would you like to address that,
I
Dick?
didn't get the email, so.
I went over that with Dick. He showed me in the ordinance where it is. It's the first time we've ever done this.
I know it's the first time, and I was looking, maybe I was getting blurry-eyed, but
I can review that if you'd like.
To me.
In chapter 163 of the city code, it talks about the property maintenance code. And what happens with these model codes is we don't incorporate the whole thing into the ordinance because it's pretty voluminous, so we adopted it by reference. And then what we do put in the code is the additions, changes, and insertions. And that can be found in section 163.3, which talks about additions, insertions, and changes. Item D of that section says, section 111.2, which is in this book, is modified, and it's a membership of the board, says to delete, quote, a minimum of 3 members who are qualified by experience and training to pass on matters pertaining to property maintenance and who are not employees of the jurisdiction, unquote, and replace with, quote, the same body that makes up the Saco City Council and shall operate under the same rules of order it has adopted. The chair of the board shall be the mayor, or in his absence, a member of the council selected by its own membership. That's where you would find the reference to the city council being the board that hears these appeals.
All set?
yeah, what he just read off, I did not have it on the
Okay.
version of what I was looking at.
Came in this
so-
afternoon.
Well, it
Okay.
came in, it's a long story about how it's formatted here, but it still leaves me on the screen that it doesn't show it as a new email.
Oh.
If another new email comes in, then that takes over. So I'll talk to IT about this, but.
Okay, any other council questions before we begin? Okay, let's begin with the CEO's presentation, please.
Do you want Mr. Rivard to come forward and be at the table up front here, or?
Yeah, is he here?
He is here.
Why don't you have the seat over here, sir? Okay.
Okay, this property has quite a history with my office. It began back in 2014 with some complaints issued by the neighbors concerning a rooming house that was being operated. And when we investigated, we found that our father's house had leased the building and was operating a type of recovery, halfway house type operation there. We didn't look into it too much further because we believed that they were covered under the Fair Housing Act, but that was, again, a mistaken belief, and we didn't pursue it that much until things began to heat up again this year. Mr. Rankin from the General Assistance Office came to me in May advising that a person he had assisted had rented a room at 32 Clark Street and found that after he had rented it that he must pass through a second floor bathroom in order to access his bedroom. That was the only way in and out of his bedroom. When other tenants occupy the bathroom, he either needs to exit his room or be locked in until the bathroom occupant is completed doing whatever he's doing in the bathroom. I requested the fire department and I make arrangements to perform a full inspection of the building. I was not able to contact the owner at the time, and it fell off of our radar screen, so to speak, for the moment. Until June 3rd, of this year, when we received another complaint from the mother of a tenant who was now occupying the same room that Mr. Rankin had talked to me about. The person who he had assisted had moved out, and they had re-rented the room to another person. She was complaining about the fact that the room was behind the bathroom, and that the building had bed bugs in it. We wrote a notice of violation on the 8th to the owner, citing him for zoning infractions and of the life safety code violations we found in that building at the time. We sent it by certified mail to the owner, but it was returned as unclaimed. On the following day, we received another complaint from the residents at 34 Clark Street, which is the same building on the other side of a firewall, advising that they had bed bugs. Between the June 11th and the 12th, I received 8 separate emails from Mr. Rivard outlining steps he had taken to rid the building of bed bugs, the cleaning operations he had undertaken, and the lack of cooperation he was experiencing with the owner of the building. With the assistance of the city attorney, on the 13th of June, we filed a notice of land use violation at the York County Registry of Deeds, so that we would be placing anyone who might have an interest in purchasing the property that there were violations. Those violations outlined in that notice were the same violations that we sent, that were contained in the letter we sent to Mr. Doe, the owner of the property, on the 8th. On the 22nd of June, I was visited by the owner, who advised that he again had hired Bugsy's Pest Control to handle the bed bug infestation, but that Mr. Rivard was preventing the exterminator from entering his part of the building. Without access to the entire building, any treatment of bed bugs would be ineffectual. I advised Mr. Doe that I would contact Mr. Rivard and ask that he cooperate with the exterminator. I telephoned Mr. Rivard, and he advised that he did indeed refuse to allow Bugsy into his unit, since he could not produce his state license as an exterminator. He was concerned about the type and proper application of pesticides in his unit. On the 23rd, the following day, I received an email from Mr. Rivard indicating that the building's occupancy level was again over 3 outsiders, which moves it from a classification of single family to a rooming house. 3 outsiders being the kind of like magic number, the magic demarcation line that classifies buildings under the life safety code. On the 28th of June, we wrote a letter to Mr. Doe after speaking to him in person that we would schedule a full inspection of the building on July 6th at 2 p.m. I requested that he advise each of the tenants of this inspection so we could have access to all portions of the building. On about July 1st, it could be days one way or the other, the building went up for sale. The real estate sign was put in front of it. On the 6th, we performed a full inspection of the building, and that included myself and the fire department. And it resulted in a list of deficiencies and notice, which are the subject of this appeal here tonight. There are photos that will be appearing up here behind you that will kind of document some of the findings that we had. This was posted inside the living room, more or less pointing to the fact that the building is used as a housing, and that there are rental payments being made. That's a picture of the smoke detector that was in the living room, the common space, with the battery removed. That's the electrical panel that is in the basement of one of the units. That's the way we found it. There are improperly terminated wires. The entire board is open and it is electrified, so anybody can reach in there and get a pretty good shock if they weren't touching the right things. That shows, again, an improperly terminated wire above the circuit breaker panel. These were just wires that were cut above the circuit breaker panel. We don't know who cut them. This is a picture of the bedroom window inside the bedroom that is behind the bathroom. It is a small window. It's inadequately sized and doesn't meet the egress requirements under today's code. Hard to see, but this is a smoke detector that has been removed from its housing. That's the door to the room behind the bathroom. That's the only door into that bedroom. That is another photograph of another smoke detector that was missing during our inspection. It was pulled off the ceiling. That is whatever the tenants were using to eliminate the bed bugs. They're buying it in gallon quantities. This is a third floor bedroom, and it shows, again, an inadequate sized window on one side. The following photograph is on the other side. So those two windows are kind of side by side, but they built a wall in between the two units to create two bedrooms on the third floor. I might add there's only one access way to that third floor, those two third floor bedrooms. At the time of my inspection, those bedrooms were vacant, but they had been used before and let out, rented out to different people. That's the exterior stairway. The tread and riser are rotted. So those are some of the findings we came across during our inspection. Mr. Rivard accompanied us throughout the entire inspection, directing comments towards both I and Deputy Chief Pendleton, making many accusations towards the owner, who also accompanied us. I advised Mr. Rivard that I would come speak with him separately after our inspection was complete, but he insisted on following us. Among the statements he made during this inspection was questioning how the city could permit people to live in such conditions. I learned later that the owner had served Mr. Rivard with a notice to quit. I'd also determined that Mr. Doe was on occasion again occupying the travel trailer parked near his garage. That was another one of the code violations we found early on in 2014. I consulted with both the city attorney and the fire chief and the deputy fire chief as to the next steps we were to take after I reviewed and listed some of the code violations we had found, and we were all in agreement that the building should be vacated for the safety of the occupants. And that was on the 8th of July. On the 11th of July, the letter was finished and delivered in hand to the owner and each tenant in the building. If the room was not occupied, we left a copy of the letter at the door to the bedroom. Each bedroom has its own hasp and padlock on it on the outside. I returned to the building to see if it had been vacated on the 18th, and I found that most of the occupants had in fact vacated, but there were still 3 that had not, including Mr. Rivard. Mr. Rivard had posted the legal post on his door, a copy of which is in your package, the 3 photographs. I took that as an appeal to my notice to vacate the structure. The notice that Mr. Rivard wrote was dated July 15th, and a transcription of that notice was sent to Mr. Sutherland and the mayor on the same date. On the 18th, I did not receive Mr. Sutherland, Counselor Johnston, and Emily Roy, who's the administrative assistant to Mr. Sutherland, receives various emails from Mr. Rivard on this matter as well. And we just pretty much continue to receive inquiries from the counselors because apparently emails were being forwarded to the counselors concerning our actions regarding this property. On the 29th of July, I advised Mr. Rivard of this scheduled hearing tonight, and so he received notice of this. And just today, I received another complaint from the tenant at 34 indicating that she was attempting to relocate. However, the bed bug infestation was becoming a big problem, and she didn't want to take the bed bugs with her to wherever she was relocating to. So I spoke to Mr. Doe this evening to see if we could make arrangements to get an exterminator to at least take care of that problem in that unit. The International Property Maintenance Code that we have adopted is a basic regulatory tool that we use to enforce minimum property standards for the city. It is a model code that was written, it is written and maintained by the International Code Council. It is changed every 3 years. We have adopted the 2009 edition, and every 3 years there is a code cycle that changes the code and listens to different proposals to make amendments to that code. And this is used internationally, but mostly throughout the United States. I am the chairman of the body that listens to those changes for the United States. I've been on this particular code panel for 12 years now. So I'm very familiar with what's contained in this code, and it's kind of very near and dear to my heart. The letter that I sent on July 11th, as you can see, the number and the series of violations we discovered during our inspection is apparent. Despite our repeated orders to cease operating this building as a rooming home, the use is still ongoing. These notices of violation go back quite a few months. As many of you know, the fire at 24 Noy Street in Portland, where several people perished, was occupied in a very similar fashion to this one. Zoning does not permit boarding homes in this district, but even if it did, there are missing smoke detectors, as you saw in the photographs, in several of the bedrooms. Many rooms do not have adequate egress-sized windows, and the building is not equipped with a fire alarm as required for new rooming and boarding homes. There are several major electrical code deficiencies, as you saw, and although currently unoccupied, there is only one way out of the third floor bedroom, which is down an open interior set of stairs, and the windows in those bedrooms also do not meet the egress standards. The same goes for the finished basement space at the rear of the building. There's only one way in and out of that space, and that is through an interior set of stairs. The windows in the basement are standard basement windows. They're not egress windows. Mr. Rivard advised me that until recently, this space had been rented out to 2 occupants. As you may recall, a recent fire on Main Street in Biddeford, which resulted in 2 deaths, had only one way in and out of that living space as well. I take my job very seriously, and I weigh the decisions to vacate properties thoroughly. It always boils down to the safety of the residents in the building. If, God forbid, the building ever catches fire and those residents cannot safely escape because of conditions that I knew existed but did not meet the minimum codes, I would find it pretty impossible to live with myself and my conscience. Mr. Rivard is an occupant of the building and certainly has standing to appeal my decision, but he does not have the permission of the owner to undertake the repairs necessary to make the building code compliant. I'll ask Mr. Doe to testify to that later on in the proceedings if the council wishes to. So that is pretty much my case in a nutshell. If I'm not sure when you want to have the question and answer period, or if you want Mr.
Well, what I'd
Rivard to
like
go
do,
forward.
I think the provision is that you make your testimony. I'd like to ask council have any questions for you, then we'll turn to the fire chief if he has any comments, the chief of the fire department, and then we'll allow the appellant to make his comments, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Okay. Mr. Doe?
Mr. Mayor,
Well, no, I just want to hear from the chief now. Mr.
Oh,
Doe is
okay.
on.
Wait a minute.
Mayor, Mr. Doe is not an appellant in this case.
I understand that, but I think the CEO has absolute right to request that the data he presented be confirmed by Mr. Doe if needed be.
Is
But
confirmation release not appropriate?
the question is, do either fire chiefs want to make any comments?
We came into this a little bit behind Dick, but quickly got caught up, and we certainly share the views he presented. I can verify, testify to the conditions, the photos, and the conversations we had. Fully supports him. You know, going way back, when a decision was made for this half of the building that's listed as a single-family residence to make it into something more than that, at that point, we would have had to treat it as a new facility. And as a new facility, there's a lot of, items it would have had to meet, including fire alarm, sprinkler, and all that. It kind of got up and running unknowns to the city, and it would have been easy to look at it as an existing facility. But again, backing up, it was never officially a facility at all. So again, we support the path Dick's taken, and if there's any other questions, we'd be glad to talk and answer those.
Okay. No other comments from the CEO and his representatives. Council questions for the CEO.
I guess question I got is, who was collecting rent for a boarding house, and who was basically running the boarding house, if that's what you want to call it?
Mr. Doe owns the property. Mr. Doe introduced Mr. Rivard as his house manager on one occasion where I was at the property, and I was dealing with Mr. Rivard on the first complaint we had concerning bed bugs in that room that's behind the bathroom. So
But
I'm not sure who financially.
Who established the boarding house? Was it Mr. Rivard or was it Mr. Doe?
Mr. Doe originally signed, I'm not sure if he signed or he agreed with Mr. Martin to allow our father's house to set up a boarding home for people with disabilities, such as a drinking problem, recovering alcoholics, recovering drug addicts. And then that ceased to operate at some point that we weren't aware of, and it became just a boarding home for people looking for a place to live at a cheaper rate. There are 7 bedrooms that are leased out, including Mr. Rivard's, plus the basement area that I'm not sure what that qualifies as, but it was rented out separately. I understand, and Mr. Rivard could clarify, that he's the one that collected the rents and made the payments. There was some sewer assessment fees that were back due, and those were being managed by Mr. Rivard, as I understand it. I may be mistaken.
Other council questions on this side? Kevin?
Who owns 34, the other side?
Mr. Doe, he owns the entire building.
And that electrical panel you showed,
Yes.
does that control the whole building or just 32?
Just 32.
How does the panel look on 34? Were you able to
We
get
didn't
access
look
to
on
that?
that
Can't
side.
look on that side? Okay. It's a pretty bad panel.
Other questions from the council? Hearing no questions, we'll call on appellant.
I got one more question,
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. if the same owner owns both sides of the building, should we have done an inspection on 34? Even though it was not considered a boarding house or whatever?
In hindsight, we probably should have taken a look at both there are 2 units on the other side of the building. One that's occupied by Mr. Doe's ex-wife, and another unit whom I received a complaint from this morning concerning the bed bugs. We did not look at those. Our primary concern was the boarding house operation.
What's that?
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Rivard?
I just want to point out.
Hold on, I'm sorry, Mr. It's not working? Hold on, guy. All right. Mr. Johnston? Just a second.
I'm just curious, now that the building's been condemned, what's the city's plans moving forward to do with the building, or the owner of the building, for that matter?
You could ask, you may be able to ask the owner, however, the building is for sale. Mr. Doe's plan, as I understand, is just to sell the building
As is?
and move on.
And it's a single-family residence on that half of the building.
Right.
So to do anything different other than address the violations to
Right,
make
they'd
it
have to
a safe
put it back to a
single-family.
single-family home, not a boarding house. Okay.
What's that, Counselor?
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Rivard. I try mic now? Is it working?
Can,
Yep,
Yeah.
okay, you're on, guy.
okay, well, I'll just address the most recent issues before I get to what I have here.
Would you
That
speak a
is
little
it.
closer to the mic if you could?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't want to be, is that okay?
That's better. Thank
Okay. Pertaining to the question about a single-family unit, it's, in fact, it's a 3-unit home. So it's qualified and has been for a very long time for 3 units, and that's how it's reconstructed. It has been rented out by Mr. Doe since 2004, which is the year in which he purchased the house. And prior to that, Mr. Jalbert, Roger Jalbert, who is in fact the inspector for the city of Biddeford, was the owner of the house, and he also rented out parts of the house back then. So that hopefully clarifies. Most of what,
Right, by
Mr.
the house, do you just mean 32?
I beg your pardon?
By the house, do you just mean 32 Clark Street?
I can't quite catch that.
You said the house. Do you mean
Yes,
the
it's
whole
a
building
house.
or 32 or
Right.
34?
32 and 34 has 2 numbers just by virtue of having that firewall. It was built in the 1800s, and it was built as a single-family house, but very large. And then it was subsequently segregated into 3 approved units. So the issue is with the 32 part of the building and what, there are other issues with the building, absolutely, but, that's kind of what we're focusing on is the 32 section of the building. And I'm absolutely in accord with virtually everything that Mr. Lambert said. I do have to clarify just a couple of things. One, so that it doesn't look like this is sort of retribution. It is retribution, but it's in the other direction, because the writ to quit was nonsense just because I was the person who voiced the first complaints, and I could document everything that I'm saying to you. I was the first person that voiced the complaint, raised the issue, and insisted that something be done about the bed bugs. When I insisted after a number of days that had to be addressed, I was relieved of being house manager. And when I say relieved, I mean relieved. Okay? So that was adjudicated in court already on the 22nd, which Mr. Doe, I'm sure, was hopeful that I would be in transit or on the street or something by the 22nd, because so many actions were taken to have me moved out of my home, my space, my room, so that I couldn't even make an appearance on the 22nd. And it was adjudicated in my favor completely because he was fraudulently claiming, and in a public document, claiming that I owed 6 months' rent, which is preposterous. And I've never owed a penny in rent, and I've never owed a penny in mortgage payments. I've paid them all my life for all of that. I could document that. His case evaporated. I went back, and then the next thing I get is a notice, really interesting, to vacate. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not point out that Mr. Lambert, who I like very much, has previously been in my presence and seen a lot of what the problems are. So, one would have hoped that this would have been a more subtle approach, or a more some more advanced notice of some kind would have, even on Mr. Doe's behalf, that would have been suggested what the possibilities were, what the ramifications were, and what had to be achieved for him to meet the goals of the code. But we never, whatever mail he may or may not have gotten, because I send him certified mail too, and he never picks it up because he doesn't live in the house. He was living in the RV, in the driveway, and that was his, he still collects the mail, but he doesn't pick up. You can't get him to get a certified letter or anything, because he just won't pick them up. So you can't be in contact with him that way. So I do understand Mr. Lambert's problem in communicating with him, but he has managed to personally connect with him because I've been there when it's happened. So nobody else had any concept whatsoever that things were gonna, we went from no guidance at all, no suggestions to me, and the house manager, I arrived as a tenant, and I paid several months in cash in advance as a tenant there, because Mr. Doe expressed to me that he was 4 days away from losing CMP, 4 days away from running out of oil, and 4 days away from a foreclosure instituted by the city of Saco pertaining to a bill of $6,000, which he owed to the sewer company. I, out of my concern for that, having just arrived, thought the way he spoke to me, I believed him, and so I advanced the money to help him, and then further, I took it upon myself to go with him down and try to negotiate some kind of a concrete deal with the sewer company and the city so that he would not be foreclosed upon, but would make payments, and then hopefully add on to those payments. None of this occurred. He made the absolute minimum payments, never made any progress. And the thing that's very disturbing to me is that in the situation I found myself, I was fully aware of exactly what the income was that Mr. Doe was making out of this house. And it was $6,372 a month from renting either side, at the point at which I began helping him, because he pleaded with me for weeks to try to do this, and that was not what I was interested in doing. I did not want to take this on, but he spoke a lot about Christianity and his religious beliefs, and I was swayed by that, and I was fully convinced. And it's eventually, when he was in such dire straits, he asked for assistance. And when I started to view things properly, and I realized this doesn't add up. He's making over $6,000 in income, and he's not paying, a CMP bill or an oil bill or any of the bills. It didn't add up. It was not correct. So I just wanted to state that with a view to my reputation as far as the order to quit. That was just to get me out of his hair. And I respect Mr. Lambert very much, and I've enjoyed his company, and I think he's a fair person. But I think that over the course of the years, he's probably one would imagine that Mr. Lambert had some pre-existing relationship with Mr. Jalbert, given that they both have the same job. And it goes without saying that he has known Mr. Doe for quite a long time. So you can understand an attempt at moderation, and I have no problem with that. But to go from moderation all the way to condemnation is just, it's not an approach that anybody can deal with. Even Mr. Doe, if you were given concrete timetable and persuasion enough and ramifications enough, would make an effort to try and abate the code violations. So, pertaining to the notice of the code violations delivered to tenants and landlord by Richard Lambert, CEO for the municipality of Saco, dated July 11th, 2016. There's no dispute that there are several code violations which must be abated. The 3-unit building located at 3234 Clark has a solid foundation and is structurally sound. Condemnation does not stem from a claim of eminent domain. Demolition has not been proposed. Thus, the sole purpose that remains is abatement of the violations. This may be achieved by the City of Saco undertaking, for the purposes of the abatements, the work, and then charging the landlord, Ronald P. Doe, for the work via a property lien, if need be. It's not equitable for a landlord to rent out properties at a substantial profit, yet appear to be unwilling to make any investment whatsoever in abating code violations or in performing standard maintenance. The 16 points of the notice may be adequately satisfied without resorting to condemnation. In fact, some issues have already been rectified. 1. Section 410.1 with respect to the R1 zoning has been abated. There are now only 3 units occupied on the 32 side of the house. 2. Section 604.3 with respect to the basement can be ameliorated with a single visit from an experienced electrician. 3. Said electrician can then spend 20 minutes to fix that smoke alarm down there. 4. The cats and their owners have long since departed and the entire area has been disinfected. 5. The basement is no longer used for rental accommodations, period. 6. The section 176.30 pertaining to the discharge of stormwater must be addressed by a licensed plumber, and I suggest a time frame of not more than 2 weeks for Mr. Doe to achieve that. 7. Pursuant to 704.3, a battery will be provided by me for that unit. Even though I don't have to, I've already bought all the cleaning materials, the mop, the disinfectant, the broom. There was absolutely nothing in there, no soap. No, it was just incredible. So, 8, the front basement area has been cleared of discarded mattresses and box springs. 9, as provided for in the National Fire Prevention Association 101 Life Safety Code, section 26.2.3.5 and .1 has been met. The tenant in Unit 2 has been moved into the code-appropriate unit number 4. Plenty of window space, perfectly fine. Also, all hasps and padlocks have been removed as per, most of the hasps and all of the padlocks have been removed as per Mr. Lambert's instructions. Unfortunately, that leaves your room is not locked, you have no way to lock your room, and then the lock doesn't function to the street, to the parking lot. So people can roam by, roam in, and roam into your room if you're not there. And it's happened. So room 1 and room 6, this is number 10. That was number 9, the hasps. So minor hasps are gone, the locks are all gone. Upstairs, the padlocks are gone, the hasps, some of them are still there. I can't take them off because that's not a property. Room 1 and Room 6 both require smoke alarms in order to adhere to 704.2 of the Saco City Code. This is a very reasonable request, and implementation is not complicated. Rooms 5 and 6 on the 3rd floor are now in compliance with the NFPA Code 101-26.2.1.2. They've both been vacated. It's in compliance. As this building is no longer, this is 12, as this building is no longer a lodging or rooming house, the NFPA Section 9.6 is not in effect. That takes care of that. 13, the rooms with transoms are vacant. 14, no longer applicable because of the same reason for the same room. 15, regarding Saco City Code Chapter 169, the recreational vehicle has been removed from the property. 16, and this is the one that gets my heart, because I couldn't live with the bed bugs, and that's what started all of this. I just could not live with them. 16, a professional exterminator must be hired to apply heat treatment in order to eradicate all phases of bed bug infestation, including eggs. The exterminator must own a license to practice in Maine and have liability insurance and be willing to give you his name and not charge $200 for a $2,400 job that has to be done to the whole house. So he's used this person in the past, and that's why it keeps having to be done, because this is just toxic and it doesn't do anything. The bed bugs move to another room and move to the other side. You have to do the house. And I asked for that. I threw out some mattresses because they were so crawling infested, I just couldn't ask a human to sleep on it. And I took them of my own volition out and threw them out next to Mr. Doe's truck with a view to him taking to the dump. No sooner did I go upstairs and on the second floor, and I'm scrubbing and cleaning and bleaching and Cloroxing, and I look outside, and Mr. Doe is dragging mattresses and the box springs that I just threw out back into the house. So, the exterminator must own a license. He must also possess liability insurance. He must be able to present both when asked by an affected tenant. The landlord has not responded to this infestation despite repeated requests to do so. The city has the discretion to provide sanctions against Mr. Doe should he choose not to cooperate in this effort to abate and to adhere to the city code enforcement authority. There's an addendum provided by myself. 1, IPMC section 308.2.2 dictate that a non-functioning refrigerator, such as that being stored in the basement common area, must have its doors removed. 2, pursuant to IPMC in contradiction to section 403.51, the exterior door from the parking lot does not have a functioning lock, and the result is that any passersby, visitors, or trespassers may enter the house at any hour and enter any room at will. And for the record, my rent is fully paid, and it was paid. He just kept on to the check until he needed it, I guess, because he cashed it. But it's always paid. And even again, in court, on the 22nd, in open court, I once again offered to pay several months in advance with a view to him hopefully beginning to address some of these issues. A lot of these things can be addressed just by any form of will whatsoever. And a lot of them are not that expensive. And as most of you know, if expense is the problem, I have offered a solution to that, which is extraordinarily generous of myself. And that still remains in effect with one addendum to the offer that I made, and that's number G is deleted, completely deleted. Other than that, it remains the same offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rivard. Questions from the counselor for Mr. Rivard? Counselor Cody?
What was the July 22nd court date about?
I beg your pardon?
What was the July 22nd court date about?
Oh, it was about Mr. Doe attempting. I ended up working. This was given to me as, look, could you just, I'm never here, can you go around and collect a little rent? You're the only person who, I can trust in here. You're not an alcoholic or on drugs, and I could trust you, as a religious person to go and collect the rent and not steal it. And so I started just by little inches like that. He got me to start collecting the rent. And one thing led to another. He's very, very persuasive individual. And I probably I'm a rather academic person, but I'm a little bit gullible, I admit, in some, but he is very convincing. And little by little, I ended up finding myself working a full 60 hours a week. I'm supposed to be retired. I'm 60. He had me for nothing, for no rent. And he was supposed to remunerate me, as soon as he got his head above water, which, of course, according to him, didn't happen, but it did because I documented, and I can prove it, that he was taking in over $6,000 a month because I was collecting it and giving it to him, okay? I won't even mention what may or may not be happening tax-wise, but it's very interesting that they wouldn't spend $1 for soap dish on the house. I'd clean everything. He would do nothing ever in the house. And then he reached the point where he'd come by only once a month to collect the rent just from me. I would go out. He would show up the RV. I would hand him the cash. Bye. So he ended up getting me. I looked around. I couldn't believe it. I was befuddled. He ended up having me at 60 years old with fractured discs, working 60 hours a week, doing everything. Finding the tenants, collecting the money, cleaning the house, dealing with CSU, dealing with mental health care, behavioral health, with Shalom House, getting these clients in, trying to get them services and GA and assistant. I mean, it was endless. And I realized, I looked up and I'm doing this for nothing, $600 rent. Then he has the unmitigated gall to suggest that he now, if I would have gone for it and been foolish enough, to suggest that I owe 6 months rent, that would be the 6 months in which I worked myself until I passed out from exhaustion. 15 hours a day, 16, no help ever from anyone. None of them. Miss Shute, Mr. Doe's girlfriend,
Was that court date, was he suing you for some money? Is that what you were saying?
I beg your pardon?
The July 22nd court date, was he suing you for money?
The July 22nd court date, he was trying to suggest that I owed 6 months rent. For 6 months and more.
Was this a small claims case? He was suing you for money? Is that what it was?
No, it was an eviction case. He tried to evict me.
He tried to evict you?
He tried to evict me for 6 months non-payment of rent. The second that I stopped working for him, which was...
What happened with the case?
With the case?
Yes.
It was adjudicated in my favor because I could prove that I was working for him endlessly, and it had to be... He had to say... Under oath in court, he had to say that I was doing the 60 hours a week as a manager. I was doing that for nothing.
So you weren't evicted?
The judge did not.
You weren't evicted on July 22nd. The judge agreed with you. You weren't evicted on July 22nd.
No.
The judge.
No, I won the case. It was adjudicated in my favor, and that's when he had Miss Shute start barging into my room with people there, including children, when I was stark naked, just pushing right into my room, him laughing, people standing there, people laughing. He starts doing the same thing. He cuts the power. He just starts every day something new, something new, something new to just try and terrorize me into leaving. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Lambert, I am assuming completely unwittingly, played into his actions because while I'm dealing with all this, I'm still trying to help the people that are in there. And then I get this 3-day notice to vacate. And everybody was terrified, and they started vacating. And that is preposterous. Rather than having some sort of interaction and stipulation that is easily accessible to City Council and to Mr. Lambert and the Code Enforcement Department, where there's a structure whereby Mr. Doe has to achieve certain things or have certain results against him, rather than institute any ramifications or responsibilities to Mr. Doe, who has made a living out of this house, completely living off this house since 2004, rather, let's just get the tenants who are already dealing with a lot of problems. Fortunately, I don't have some of the problems that those other people do have, but somebody has to speak in their behalf. And fortunately, I was there, because otherwise they would do what most of them did, and that's scurry off into the street with nowhere to live while he proceeds to roll around and act as though he couldn't care less, because he doesn't care.
Okay, thank you.
Do
Thank
you
Mr.
still
Ryan.
want to go ahead with the appeal? Do you still want to go ahead with the appeal? You're not living there. Why do you want to go ahead with the appeal?
He is living there.
I live there.
Who
Still
lives
living
there
there?
now?
Where are you living?
Who lives in
I
32
live
right
there.
now?
At 32?
I live at 32.
Oh, you're
Right.
still living there.
Yeah, I
How
live
many
at
human
32.
beings are in 32?
Pardon?
How many people are in the building 32 Clark Street?
32, how many people?
Yeah.
There are 3 at this point.
Tonight, who's sleeping there tonight?
Who's sleeping there tonight? There are 3 units occupied involving 4 people.
So you by yourself on what floor? The first floor?
I'm on the first floor by myself.
Second floor?
There's an office that used to be on the second floor. There's Matthew Cressy. I have been pleading.
Just one person. Second
Yeah,
floor.
there's Matthew Cressy, and then in the room next to him, there is a couple. So
Next to him. So on the second floor.
yeah, on the second floor. So there's 4 human beings on 32. There's 4 human beings in 34, and there's 2 human
32.
beings in
32. 4 people total, 32. Okay?
right.
Is that, forget about the code violation for a second. Is that proper occupancy as of right now?
That would not be considered a rooming house at this time. Although, I'm not sure how the code terms it, because one of those occupants is not the owner.
So one of the occupants of
Of that si-
apartment dwelling needs to be.
Doesn't have to be the owner?
doesn't
Okay.
have to be the owner.
Yeah, no,
Tell me
if they're, in terms of 4 people, well, I know the answer, sir, so I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
There, in terms of having 4 people, the owner would be one,
Yeah.
and then there can be 3 people. The owner doesn't live there, so there are 3 parties. So it gets into a slightly gray area when you have 2 people that are in a room. There's a little bit of a leeway there. So that gets him out of that problem where a lot of these things pop up. If it means it's not a lodging house and it's not a rooming house, and those are the standards that I was addressing here. So
Besides the landlord having to live there, the number of people is okay. Okay. 34, how many people are in 34? Don't know.
I don't know.
How many people are supposed to be in 34?
It's the same arrangement all the way around. You can have one person, 3 unrelated people living as a single housekeeping unit. We don't keep tabs of that in every unit. However, I believe there's Mrs. Doe, Mr. Doe's ex-wife lives alone, and
The one who complained is the upstairs one today? The one who
that's a
called?
family.
That's a
She
family
has
of-
children that are
So
getting
it's-
bit by the bed bugs.
So there's children on the 34 side,
Right.
and there's any kids on the 32 side of the
Not that
board?
I'm aware of.
no, there's since I live there, you'll forgive me if there's a couple and their 3 children on the 34 side, and then in the 34A side, there is an ex-wife and one of her daughters. So, and that's
See, with all this stuff, going back and forth there, we're talking about 10 people's lives are in jeopardy right now, okay? That's what we're talking about. I really don't care about you and the landlord fighting. That doesn't matter. To the city and to us right now that we're here late at night to decide this, 10 people's lives are at risk tonight. So why wouldn't, I want you to argue back to us, why wouldn't we insist that tonight you pack up your things and get the hell out of there for your own life's sake?
First of all, there is an accommodation whereby a person who is living in an environment can accommodate, if he does so willingly, a certain extent of these problems. They should and must be addressed between the municipality and the landlord, but there is the discretion given to the tenant whether to tolerate or not to. That's one. Two, this didn't go, Mr. Lambert has seen these problems. This is not a major thing. This is not an imminent danger, health risk, wherein the house is going to burst into flames.
Yeah, that electrical
It could
box,
very well,
I
I
argue
think.
that electrical
Yeah,
box.
that's not.
Jesus.
David,
I know, I'm getting outbursts here.
It has been there for years like that, and Mr. Lambert has been through there. So if this was all, this can be, an electrician could go in there and I've offered to pay for one, and he can deal with these. These things are not incomprehensible. The people who are professional can go in and can deal with these problems, and if there was such an inherent, imminent, immediate danger, Mr. Lambert, the fire department would have long since expressed concerns, posted warnings, taken sanctions and actions against Mr. Doe and not innocent tenants. So they didn't overnight turn into something dreadfully more serious. It's been like that. They need to be addressed, but in the time that it takes to disrupt everybody's life and move them out of there, though somebody could come in and within a couple of days, and I worked out a whole program of how many hours and how many days for each situation, and they could begin addressing these situations. They're not something, and
It's gotta be done.
furthermore, once
cede my time.
everyone's out, Mr. Doe will once again return to his ways of renting them. That's his only source of income. So that's what he will do. So it's uprooting people to no end.
Councilor Minthorn?
I view this as 2/3 a landlord-tenant dispute and 1/3 a serious code infraction. And what I would like to see is tomorrow, Dick and the chief go look at 34. If everything exists the exact same way, it'd be condemned and vacated by Friday night. We got 10 lives on the line. I don't want to be in the newspapers like Biddeford, like Portland, on the what if something happens. I want to prevent it from happening right now, as quickly as we can legally, have this place condemned and shut down.
Do you have any questions for 32?
On 32, at this point, if it doesn't have smoke detectors, the electrical panel is unchanged, there are life safety issues, I do not see where we can sit back and do anything other than condemn the property for those issues.
Any other councilor questions on this side? I got some over here, so go ahead, Councilor Rose, one more.
It was just the electrical panel. Was that the first time, Dick, on this last visit, was the first time you saw specifically the electrical panel?
Yes.
So that was the first time?
This is the first time, on July 6th was the first time we did a full inspection of the entire side of that building. We had been in that building on and off, but only in specific locations, or even to the point of being only on the back porch. I had a complaint about bug infestation. It wasn't specific as to what kind of bug it was. When I missed Mr. Doe and Mr. Rivard at the property, they spoke to me outside on the porch and said it was just fruit flies that they had problems with. So we didn't enter the building.
I mean, this is my opinion, you don't have to share your opinion with me, but the number one life-threatening issue right now is a fire from that electrical panel.
Yes.
And that's the first time you saw it on July 11th.
Yes.
Okay. Bed bugs are not life-threatening, right?
They're a nuisance,
Yeah.
but they're not life-threatening. They're
I have sent emails referring to the this is 10 of you and 1 of me, and I can see how this is lining up, and I'm going to say my piece, okay?
Well,
First of all,
Mr.
you have to be
Let's
aware.
finish the questions first, and you can say your piece, okay? Would you mind if we finish the questions first?
I can't answer This is unfair. I'm one person and there's 10 people. Okay,
Go ahead.
I want to address. I sent emails pertaining to some of the violations prior to all of this, so that's inaccurate. As far as we leap to condemnation, it's a very difficult thing to condemn a building. 99% of the time, it is done because of the municipality or the city or the county taking the property with a view to some public edifice or thoroughfare. It's a very rare thing. The second way it happens is when there's an earthquake or some natural disaster that devastates the building. This building is solid. To leap to condemnation, as Mr. Cote has suggested, is not a quick fix where you just get rid of the tenants and problem solved. Tenants or no tenants, the problems must be addressed, period. Secondly, the next step, sir, Mr. Cote, the next step is Superior Court. So it's not like kick them out in 2 days and they're gone. I will go to Superior Court and I will address this in an arbitration that is completely neutral. And I'm very sorry to say that I'm not entirely positive that this is entirely neutral, because now all of a sudden you're so worried about our lives that you notice that some of the wires, I'm not even an electrician. I mean, can be, and now so that the object is going to be to throw people out into the street and have no repercussions. That's not going to happen. So you can't wash this away. People have rights. I have rights. I'm a human being. I live there. I have done everything possible that I could do to uphold and fix the place on nothing.
Let me tell you my point of view, okay?
Wait a minute, before we do, I think we have a few more questions here.
Wait a minute.
No, let him
Wait a
speak.
minute.
All right, go ahead.
Wait a minute. Okay, I've been a lawyer for going on 40 years. You're fighting with your landlord.
Yeah.
30-day notice, he can kick you out. Why do you want to go to Superior Court, which would take a long time and spend a lot of money? It's just the filing fee. I admire your fighting attitude, but practically, economically, why bother to do that? Why not just?
Sir,
you've offered to pay money to stay in a house with a landlord that you're not getting along with, and the property's for sale. Why don't you just?
there are several presumptions in that statement.
Another unit, because someone
Sir,
else.
I don't appreciate presumptions that indicate that you have any concept of what my wherewithal or my means might be, because you absolutely do not. I am exactly the person that will spend $50,000 to do this, okay?
Yeah,
And
but
I can
what
prove
I'm-
to you
what I'm telling
that
you,
I
you
can-
can't-
I
you can't
offered-
win-
Did
you
you see
can't
that I
win-
offered
you
$10,000?
can't win the
Did you
eviction.
Did you see that I
Hey,
offered?
It's not an argument. This is not an argument.
I offered
Eric.
$10,000.
Let us argue.
I offered $10,000 to you, the council,
Look.
in cash.
If
I'll write you a check now.
if he wants to
if it's
evict
used
you,
to address the issues.
if he wants to
So,
evict you and he gives you a 30-day notice, he doesn't need a reason.
Stick with that.
You don't have a lease.
stick with that.
You don't have a lease.
I have
He can evict you.
I have a lease by activation, a verbal lease.
You have a month-to-month lease,
I have a month-to-month lease.
and with the 30-day notice, he can kick you out.
Okay, I'm not gonna.
Let's not.
We can.
Well, I'm
that issue,
telling this. I'm
I will-
telling this
I'm not
for
gonna argue.
for your own good.
Okay, we'll find. You're not doing anything for
Counselor.
my own good. Okay,
He's
you're-
already given us a
Hey,
notice to
guys,
quit.
let's move
You're
on
doing
here.
nothing.
No, I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
I know, but
I'm trying to make him understand the situation he's
It's
in.
I'm
his
trying to make you
choice.
understand it's
Now,
my home.
listen, let me talk to him for a
I don't
minute.
come to your house and start to make accusations and try to get you thrown out. So you don't come
No,
to
you don't-
mine
you
like you're
don't-
doing me a favor.
You
You're
don't,
not doing me a
with,
favor,
you don't,
sir.
you need, with a 7-day notice, you need a reason, not
Okay.
payment or trouble. With a
Sir,
30-day
Mr.
notice-
Mayor,
uh,
Mr. Mayor,
hey,
Mr. Mayor,
listen to
this
me.
is, he's getting into a complete legal argument. The legal argument should transpire in a court of law, and this action should be recorded
It will be.
in a
It is.
court
Yeah.
of law.
I'm
And
trying to-
until it is absolutely ineffectual and non-existent. It must be recorded in a court of law, and hence I can respond in a court of law, which I will. So I do not wish to initiate with Mr. Cote now on these issues because
Understood.
they can be resolved
Trying
in
to save
court,
you-
which is
I'm trying to
apparently
save
where
you
we're
some-
going.
I'm
Issue
trying to
moves
save you
on.
some money by telling you
Counselor-
some things.
Counselor Precourt, you have a question
Just
over
a minute,
there?
just a minute, let me explain this to him.
No, Eric, you've had the
I
opportunity.
don't care to hear from Mr. Cote.
Give me a minute.
I really don't.
Explain
He's
to
not
him.
helping.
Eric,
You
Eric,
can't.
I'm gonna
he
rule
can
you out
give
of order,
He can
Eric.
give you a 30-day notice and
I
kick you
don't-
out.
Sir, Mr. Mayor,
You understand that?
Mr. Mayor, I will
Eric.
not be intimidated. I do not want to hear from Mr. Cote. And
Thank
if there's more questions, I will answer them.
Waste your money.
My question's for Mr. Doe. Those electrical panels, those wires were intentionally cut on top of that panel. They were cleanly cut. It's not like they were broken wires, they were cut. Were they at least disconnected? There was 3 wires at least in that photo that showed that there was a clean cut of 3 wires on the top of that panel. Can we get the photo back up?
You put that
I
back
can't-
up, because this is the crux of the debate right now.
Plus-
If that's
plus we're
not
talking the
fixed,
safety-
these people gotta get out.
We're talking a safety issue,
Get-
and
get
our
the
code
picture up.
enforcement officer is legitimate in saying that there is code violations here that are life-threatening. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I've got printed versions here.
I mean,
And can Mr. Doe speak to why this isn't being fixed?
look at these wires. Those are all clean-cut wires.
Hold on, guys. The CEO.
How did this come to be? How did this happen on an electrical panel? Somebody had to go in and do this.
I don't know who it was.
Counselor Precourt?
Want me to speak for a minute? I'll give you 1 minute.
He's not an appellant. He's not an appellant. If he was interested,
He's not an appellant, but he's the owner of the property, and I've got questions addressing the issues in the property.
he should have put himself on the docket as an appellant.
Okay, the question is to Dick then, okay?
Right.
Why hasn't the electrician gone in there yet to fix this?
Thank you.
Because after advising Mr. Doe of the issue, nothing has been done.
Isn't there
So is
some...
Mr.
hold
Doe
on.
in the building?
Mr. Doe owns the building.
Is he in this building right now?
He is
He is
behind
standing
me.
behind you.
Yes.
Can he answer why he hasn't got an electrician in there?
Through the chair.
But isn't he, can he be brought up?
Wait.
Because he doesn't care, that's why, let's be honest. But if we're going to say that these are life-threatening issues, why weren't they immediately taken care of at the cost of the city of Saco, and we could have leaned his property?
We can't do that unilaterally.
Yes, you can.
Well, then
No,
how
sir,
can you-
we cannot. This is not the city of Saco's property. We do not have that
It's
kind of
not
administrative
unilateral. It's not
authority.
unilateral.
No,
It's
sir.
not unilateral.
I am not going to argue with you either.
Please don't.
Unilateral.
Please
It's
don't.
not unilateral, but it is a process. It's not unilateral, he's correct, but it is a process that has to be initiated at some point. You initiate the process, and you proceed to having it done. It's not unilateral, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Rebar.
It,
Okay.
it would require a court order to do that.
My next question is this is a single building. If you're going to put it down as a life-threatening issue on one side of this building, this whole building should have been evacuated. Not just one unit. I mean, if this causes a fire, it burns the whole building down. It's not going to stop it at. So
At the
I
fire.
would have suggested the whole building gets.
Well, I think the suggestion's been made by, I think, Councilor Roche, or Councilman Thorne, that the facility at 34 be reviewed in its entirety as well, and I assume the CEO will do so in the near future. There is an argument to be said there is a firewall between the two buildings. I don't know how valuable that is, but I would agree with the concerns you've expressed.
Well, and then if that's the case, then I think Dick should do an inspection of the entire property and assess it at that point. But until that point,
Well, let's, go ahead, Chief.
There seems something backwards about the whole thing because it's Mr. Doe's property. These violations and deficiencies are against him. I applaud Mr. Ravad for identifying how to remedy them. CEO and fire, we always look for a plan of action, how to get it done, and whether that time frame is reasonable. What he's identified is probably a reasonable plan, but it needs to come from Mr. Doe. But until such time, you and us don't want someone injured or killed. So by his own admission, it's not safe. Until something's done to address these, there shouldn't be people
Understood.
And we can confirm tomorrow if 34 is
30 days.
And because Mr. Doe does not seem like he's interested in paying for this project, which I agree with you has to be done, I have offered to
I know you have.
put $10,000 in play so that these issues, and they certainly can be well addressed, and I have a total plan on a day-per-day, hour-per-hour basis of how these can be addressed in very reasonable fashion. It's a very good plan. It's a very generous offer on my part that will help this, because eventually, the city of Saco is going to bear the burden for this property because the mortgage is underwater. He's 4 months out. He's facing foreclosure. He has several liens for automobiles, $27,000 lien to his ex-wife. He's another $30,000. If you put the liens together that he has and how far underwater it is, he has no vested interest. He would benefit at this point from.
Right.
He does not have equity left in any capacity for this real estate. So the city of Saco, I guarantee you that hardworking taxpayers in Saco will be footing the bill for Mr. Doe's recalcitrance in addressing these issues.
Thank you.
When they hear that Mr. Rivard has stepped forward and offered with cash immediately $10,000 to be accommodated by the council as to how it's spent entirely with a view to addressing exactly the violations that need to be rectified. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. I think the councils will have to live with the ramifications of their decision this evening. Do we have any other questions from the council? Okay, go ahead.
Has the $10,000 been offered to the landlord to have these fixed?
I have already, as I mentioned, I have forwarded several $1,000s to him previously, and he has chosen to spend not a penny of it on the house. That is why my suggestion was to put it in trust and have the council as a whole review in conjunction with Mr. Lambert.
But it starts with a private agreement between you and the landlord. And have you even had that meeting to discuss this?
With Mr. Doe?
Yeah.
Mr. Doe before all of this happened, when he relieved me of my duties in order, because of that,
Just talking from July 11th to today.
I have from the very beginning followed even Mr. Lambert's suggestion that I speak with Mr. Doe, and I have politely asked Mr. Doe if we could meet as two gentlemen and try to figure something out, some kind of a collaboration. And Mr. Doe has said no. He told me, I have already sold the house. I'm buying another house with Charlene, and you have to move immediately. None of that was true, which is not surprising. So in answer to your question, I've made every effort, and I'm still willing to sit down as two gentlemen and try to figure out something that would benefit Mr. Doe and the tenants. But so far, he has not expressed any interest to speak to me.
But he's here, you've made a public offer, in a sense, to pay for an electrician to fix that panel.
Yes.
Tonight is the first time that Mr. Doe is hearing this, right? That you've made a public,
No, I have it posted on my door.
that you, okay.
Council, I think we need to, unless we have a specific question, I think the time has probably come. A specific question, Councilor Cody?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Are the parties willing to sit down and mediate and try to resolve these issues and come back in the next council meeting?
Are you speaking about tonight, sir?
I said, are the parties willing to sit down and mediate these issues and come back in the next council meeting?
I absolutely am willing to do that, yes.
We have 20 days from the date of the application to provide a written decision.
No, you can agree to an extension.
Yes, you can agree to an extension.
I can call Kevin Zlager in the morning. I had no idea there was what stupidity on my part. Call stupidity on the carpenter. I don't know what I used Kevin Zlager when I got my own plumbing. If I had known, I know it's written out and everything, but if I had realized it was live wire on the top of the box, I would have called Kevin Zlager right then.
I don't know if they're live. I just see clean-cut
You have to
wires.
stay to the agreed-upon rules of the game.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
know,
not
I know.
discussions with the owner. Thank you. All right, now, one of the four recommended determinations is not what we're discussing here. What we're discussing, according to Councilor Cody, basically, is a tabling of the motion to allow the parties involved to negotiate a solution other than upholding the CEO's determination. Is that correct, Councilor Cody?
Yes, if they're in agreement. And I let you know that, believe it or not, half to three-quarters of the cases do settle in mediation.
Yeah.
And you can't predict which ones will. And it
Absolutely.
seems to me, you're willing to front some money, you're trying to sell a house, you got some things to need fixed. Seems to me that maybe you can make some deals here and get this thing done.
Absolutely, sir. I would much prefer spending money on the house itself than money on attorneys. So I agree with you wholeheartedly,
Well-
and I'm fully willing to adapt, to try. And I've been willing to do so the whole time. And I'm willing to involve Mr. Lambert because he's the expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I follow his guidance. And I'm more than happy to try and there's nothing more humanly you could, I could offer than that. I'm certainly willing to do any kind of mediation that will move us forward.
Deputy Chief, go ahead.
I just want to comment. To me, given the relationship between these two, I can't see that Mr. Ravad is the representative of the building, and therefore, there's no way three other people can be in there with him.
I'm sorry, what was that again, Deputy?
I don't think Mr. Ravad is the true representative
Of the
or the first leaser of this property to allow subleasers to reside in that building, the three additional tenants. I think that's out the window. There's no way you can have four people in there tonight.
Well, that would be a CEO issue about zoning issues versus health and safety. If the council's intent is to table this decision to allow the CEO, the deputy chief, Mr. Doe, and Mr. Rivard to work out a solution, I would argue that the solution must be thorough for all code violations for all portions of 32 and 34 Clark Street. It's not my predilection to do this, but that would be a logical way of looking at it if we so chose as a council. Good, we got some questions on this side. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to concur with the fire chief. I think that the two parties are not able to work together. It's evidenced by that, by the ongoing disputes. And Mr. Rivard, ponying up money for your home that's maybe sold in 2, 3, 4 months, it goes to Eric's point earlier of why not use your money and find another residence. Now, I know it's your home, so it's very, it's very sacred to you. I'm sure of it, because everyone's home is their castle, and their castle is sacred.
I come from a generation. I come from a generation where there's such a thing as honor and decency.
Please let
Mr.
me
Rivard, is
finish.
it courtesy if you could let him finish, please?
Thank you. So, with that said, I believe that we have hired professionals that have done their job. They've seen the violations, they've reported it to us, and now we need to act on what they brought forward to us. That's mine.
My response to that has to be that I have worked with Mr. Doe. There's just one point that he made I want to point out. I've worked very closely with Mr. Doe nonstop for a year prior to the 1st of July. So the suggestion that I cannot work with Mr. Doe, in fact, we have been good friends up until we came to a parting, other ways pertaining to bed bugs. But other than that, he's not, I'm certainly willing to speak to him. I'm a religious person. He shares some of those beliefs. I think there's plenty of accommodation that is easily available to us. So we are certainly able to do that. And Mr. Doe will tell you himself that we're friends other than this.
I'm going to call on Councilor Gay and then Councilor Precourt, but we got to move this along, guys. Councilor Gay.
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
All right, so there's a motion to table. Is there a second on the motion?
I think the motion wants to be table it for an agreed-upon mediation. And
Yeah, I don't-
maybe have Tim Murphy be the mediator.
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
I couldn't quite hear that.
yeah, I don't know if the motion was to fully table. I think what we want to have happen, and I'll speak for myself, and I think Alan already pointed out, is to, one, immediately inspect 34, okay? Two, mediation in a very, very quick time frame. We're talking this week. I mean, we're not mediating till August 15th. I mean, I think you gotta talk to Kevin's Electric and get that electrical panel fixed ASAP, while the other ones, I guess you've said that most other ones have been resolved. I'll let you guys decide if they have been, but the electrical panel is immediate because, again, you know, there are 10 people at stake. I mean, the relationship between landlord, tenant, okay, that's all good, but we got 10 people that are living at that house tonight, so.
I agree that the panel needs to be addressed immediately. I mean, I have no idea, but just looking at it, it just doesn't feel comfortable.
Mr. Lambert has attempted, through his own testimony here tonight, that he's tried to reach out to Mr. Doe in the past and hasn't gotten any response. When do we get into the business of being a mediator?
Well, right now, I mean, now they've, anyway.
Let me, hold on, counsel. Can I make a comment on the tabling motion if we could? Just on the tabling motion has been seconded, so it's on the floor. So the only discussion should relate to that. I would suggest the council consider denying the tabling motion, and if the preference is to allow the expedient resolution of the issue, to make a finding upholding the code enforcement officer's ultimate finding absent an agreement to resolve the issue by the end of the week. That way there, you would allow the applicants the opportunity to work it out. If by the end of the week it hasn't been resolved to the satisfaction of the CEO and the police, or the chief, the action is effective. In lieu of tabling, just a comment, but it might be a more effective way in lieu of tabling.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think that's what.
The motion was to,
Table.
We need the motion to table.
It was a straight motion to table, Eric.
to table the issue, to allow them to mediate as soon as possible with Tim Murphy, if he's available, to inspect.
Not available.
Item 34, and return to the next council meeting for a decision.
Wait a minute, the motion's merely to table, Eric. You want to amend the main motion to add some stipulations, you certainly can, but the motion that was made on the floor, and you seconded, is strictly a tabling
I
action.
didn't second just to table it. I wanted them to go and sit down and talk about this. Now, this is what I do for work. This really doesn't seem that far apart. He's willing to put up some money, he needs some stuff done, he needs the work done, he's trying to sell the house. It seems to me to their benefit to work this out. Dick wants to get the stuff fixed. He wants to pay to fix it. I mean,
Your Honor, if the House,
The motion is strictly, it's within the council to discuss the tabling action only, not the main issue. Strictly the tabling action. Comments on the tabling action?
well, I don't want to table it. I wanted to have a motion that they will mediate and come back here the next council meeting and inspect.
Well, you seconded the motion, so I'm going to call for a vote.
I didn't second that motion. What I second was what I just said.
So you want me to rule the motion failed for lack of a second?
Well, no, I think Roger
Okay.
was
It's ruled there was
reconsidering
lack of
what
a
his-
second, so the
what
motion
his
failed.
motion was.
Back on the floor again. We've got to move this along, guys. We
Can-
can't beat this to
Can
hell.
I comment?
Yes,
We got violations that are life-threatening.
yes.
We can't wait 2 more weeks for another meeting. This needs to be addressed pronto.
we waited 2 years, sir.
Well, we didn't have this problem 2 years.
Yes.
You may have had it, we don't have it. We have a life-threatening issue here that needs to be addressed.
We can address the fuse box tomorrow.
No motion on the floor. Is there one to move
The
this
mo-
process
The
forward here?
motion, if I remember the 4 criteria, is to extend time,
You can modify the action.
extend time till this Friday, and what needs to be done is inspection of the other side, and a Kevin's Electric agreed upon to get in there as soon as scheduling possible, to the satisfaction of Dick Lambert.
What happens if there's a fire tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Tonight.
We're trying to go as soon as
We're
possible.
going to be responsible for that, for letting this go.
I mean, you could vote tonight to then send people over there to kick them out tonight. I'm just willing to go till Friday.
I'm just saying that if we don't address this and something happens, we're liable for that action or inaction.
Okay. I mean, I'm willing to take, I'm not, I'm willing to
That's
take
not
that.
And this has got Noy Street in Portland written all over it.
I know it does. That's why I'm not tabling it to August 15th. I'm just saying.
Noy Street was far, far more dilapidated,
Mayor.
more dilapidated. And
Mr.
we
Mayor.
don't-
Council's
if
hands.
the people cannot be moved
Come
out.
on, guys.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm going to terminate this conversation here, guy. Nothing personal, but we've got to move this process along here.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to accept the CEO's findings and move forward.
Second.
Second.
So the motion is to uphold the action of the codes enforcement officer. That's made by Councilor Doyle. It's been seconded by Councilor Precourt. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
So after, if we vote to say Dick can do what he wants to do, what will be done? I need to clarify that.
The eviction process will move forward. So, Chief?
As I understand it, we'll uphold the order on number 32, and we will be at number 34 tomorrow.
So what happens tonight, though?
What happens tonight?
Are they removed from the premise tonight?
I gotta go, how is that written in your code?
That does line Saco up for a suit. You were talking about a suit? There's your suit right there.
The complaint here is the electrical panels
wait a
are
minute.
shock hazard.
Eric, let's let the CEO get back to the question, please.
It says that under administration, the code official shall take immediate action in accordance with the decision of the board. To avoid any undue hindrance in the progress of construction, the code official is required to act without delay based on the board's decision. This action may be to enforce the decision or to seek judicial relief if the board's action cannot be demonstrated to be inappropriate.
It may seek civil relief, which is on a civil level and happens through the courts as a civil matter. It's not a criminal case, and it has to follow the litigation in the civil fashion, which means that it has to be recorded in court, and I then can respond on the record in court, and then we're back to where we are right now, and it's another 30 or 21 days, and we resolve nothing.
Point of
other
order,
than
Mr. Mayor, there's been
Mayor.
a,
Can you get back to council,
I agree,
please?
Bill. You're right. There's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. I want to
Alan-
return the discussion to the
Alan had
motion.
his hand up first.
I got a question.
All right, well,
do you
my
do?
God.
Chief, do we have the ability to get the Red Cross to take these people and put them in a motel or something tonight?
Well, I suggest that the motel or hotel be paid for by the landlord.
Well, okay, the
And if he
question was.
doesn't pay it, then he can.
We certainly could make the phone call, and that is a resource. They tell us they're available for that resource. I think if I may, I think Dick now has to take civil action in court. Is that correct, Dick?
If the tenant does not relocate upon my demand tonight, then we need to file suit and get a court order to have him removed. We just cannot unilaterally remove him. Although people think I have a whole lot of power to do these things, I really don't. It's civil procedure. It's not a criminal procedure to be there. We would need to go to the court to get an order, and I would have to speak to somebody other than Tim because he's on vacation.
Okay, we got a motion. It's been seconded. Okay, good, Counselor.
Well, what happens though, I still go back to the 10 people. You can't proceed to evict 34 yet, right? You're still leaving 6 people, including kids, in that structure, right?
I know the kids and the family are relocating. They've got another place to go, but they're not ready to leave yet.
But this action does not allow you to do anything for that side.
It's only discussing 32. It's not discussing 34.
So I think I speak for all of us by saying we're concerned about all 10 people.
There are other alternatives. We could actually require Central Maine Power to disconnect the power on that side of the building.
That requires a court order, and that will not happen.
Right, so within reason, an immediate action can be inspect 34 tomorrow, get Kevin's Electric in there, or whoever you want to get in there, and get them in by, what, Friday? And then if not, it's out.
CMP will not undertake cutting off somebody's power and subject themselves to a lawsuit, and you just have to look.
Okay, hold on, guy. Okay, Councilman.
Can we inspect tomorrow 34 and re-inspect 32 and 34 on Friday. And if on Friday we find the same thing and the repairs haven't been made to the full list, all 16 items, at that point proceed with American Red Cross or whoever we need to get the people out. I don't like
we
carrying
don't-
the liability
We don't.
of the other 9 people for the next 3 days, but I don't see how we're going to have an expeditious resolution to this tonight, nor do we have a place to get them.
No parties on the 34 side have any intention of moving whatsoever. I've spoken to them. None of them are planning whatsoever to move. Secondly, this can't be something that is not going to be achieved overnight. You just can't. You're not thinking of the people. The whole 16 issues don't have to be addressed, Mr. Minthorn. What has to be addressed that I agree with is that the fuse box is something that has to be addressed immediately. The other issues are certainly, and that fuse box is sat there looking like that, and Mr. Doe is I mean, he knows more.
Point of order.
We need to, we're going to have to, I'm going to ask for a motion to move the question here pretty darn quick, because we have a motion on the floor. In a second, we beat this baby to death. The motion as it stands is upholding the action of the code enforcement officer, period. That's the current motion that's on the floor. Any other discussions on that motion?
The fire chief has already said they will go over to 34 tomorrow. If they find violations there, they will move on those violations. Let's not stop the process. Let's move the process forward. When we continuously stop the process to check out other things, that's why we're dealing with things from 10 years ago. Let's fix the problem, follow through with the process that's in place.
Councilor Cody, you have a motion you want to make, an amendment?
Yeah, I want to require them to sit down and work this out. And this guy is offering to pay for the hazards to that building.
Is that a motion? You want to amend the main motion and include that?
Yes, to
Is there a
require the
second to the
parties
motion
to
to amend?
mediate, which they've agreed to do, as I understand. They've agreed to mediate.
Eric,
And-
I'm going to ask.
and he's
Mr.
agreed-
Mayor,
he's agreed to pay
Mr.
for
Cody?
it.
It's
No,
incumbent.
no more comments? No, we're done? I
It's-
want to know, is there a second to the Councilor Cody's motion? The amended main motion?
Just for clarification.
Yes.
We're upholding
That's what we're doing.
CO's
That's the
order,
main motion on the floor.
plus he wants to add in,
He wants an amendment to
That
allow some
they-
negotiations to occur, yes.
Okay.
And is there a second to Councilor
Second.
Cody's amendment? Hearing none, it fails for lack of a second. We're back to the main motion. Any
We did
further
say
discussion?
second.
Can you,
I did.
Your Honor, can you just run, can I hear that?
It didn't
can I
fail
hear
for
what you
lack of a second. Who seconded it?
I just seconded.
No, I didn't hear a
find it
second to Councilor Cody's motion to
Nathan
delay the
seconded it.
action for, to allow additional negotiations.
Ethan seconded it.
Nathan seconded.
You did. I thought you said no. Sorry, guys.
Second.
All right, so Eric's amendment on the floor is what, Mr. Cody? Specified again?
That the parties have agreed to sit down and mediate and try to resolve this issue and get the electrical problem fixed
What time frame?
yeah.
as soon as possible.
Well,
It has to have
What
an
time
end
frame?
that doesn't work. I mean,
Wait, okay. That's a motion, that's the amendment, is that your agreeing to that amendment?
We have to,
What do you-
we got to put a
What do you
time frame.
suggest as a time frame?
These two
By Friday.
parties have failed
By
to work
Friday?
together in the past. What makes you think that they're going to work together now?
Mr. Lambert, that's what makes me think that we're going to work together now. Mr. Lambert.
I
No
stick
public
in
discussion at
by
this time,
Friday.
okay? Sorry,
The
guys.
parties sit down and try to negotiate a settlement by Friday.
By Friday, and the main motion still stays. It's with our code enforcement officer, Dick Lambert, to make the final call. Okay? So
so
main
when does the
motion,
work have to be completed by?
By Friday.
Friday.
Close of business.
Close of business Friday. The work has to be completed.
And
So that
34
means,
has
so
to
that
be
means at
inspected.
close of business Friday, if the
34
work's
has to
not
be
done,
inspected.
Dick's
He's
gonna
in
go down there
charge.
and evacuate people on a Friday afternoon and probably not have anything lined up for the weekend. That's what it's gonna come down to.
It's not going to come down to that because we'll address the fuse box.
Better hustle, that's all. Better hustle.
All right, well, let's get this motion down again. Councilor Cody made an amendment to extend the implementation of the final action until Friday.
Let's vote on the amendment.
Is that correct?
Yes, and to require the parties to sit down and mediate, which they've agreed to do, and to inspect Unit 34.
Yeah, however it's mediated, it's gotta be done by Friday.
Okay,
And it is the all 16?
And we
All
better ho-
16?
And we better hope there's no
No, let's vote on the
deadly
amendment.
issue.
Right, the
between
amendment
now
is,
and Friday.
Well, the council's taken some risk, but I mean,
Either way.
it's been there for a long time. I think it's more important to find out what's in 34 and move ahead collectively. Deputy Chief, go ahead.
I just get a little concerned that this building that is unsecurable, people come in off the street, has another caveat as to put a fear in us of something potentially happening.
Well, I got an amendment to the motion I got to get resolved here. So I think, does the council understand the amendment to the motion? Okay.
Actions completed by Friday.
Yes, that's the amendment. Now, I'm going to call for a vote on the amendment because we need to resolve this. Okay. Council Precourt.
Yes, reluctantly.
Council Gay.
No.
Council
No.
Doyle. Okay, all right. Council Roche.
Yes, because 34 cannot be evicted tonight.
Council Minthorn.
Yes.
Council Cody.
Yes. Yes.
Oh. Council Johnston.
Yes.
All right, I think the motion passed 5-2 to amend the main motion. Now we're back to the main motion, which is uphold the code enforcement officer absent of final resolution by Friday. All right, Council Precourt.
Yes.
Council Gay.
Yes.
Council Doyle.
Yes.
Council Roche.
Yes.
Council Minthorn.
Yes.
Council Cody.
Yes.
Council Johnston.
Yes.
7-0, the motion passes. You got to Friday get your act together. We're done. Thank you very much for your time. Hearing no other matters, we're
Thank you, sir.
adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, sir.